And yes, we're going to record the session as we always do, but welcome back everybody. And we're excited to get into a bit of the technical content today. And you'll see there we've got Jamie Robinson. Jamie's the technical lead at Safe System Solutions and a very experienced road safety auditor and has held different technical lead roles in Victorian government and done work in many jurisdictions. I'll introduce him a little bit more shortly. Kathy, do you want to cover off anything administratively before you depart?
Just great job, everyone, doing the quizzes in Schoology, submitting your assignments. If you're having any troubles, do email them through to me. But otherwise, terrific work. Keep it up.
We might start on the assignments. So, Kathy, am I right? You are going to upload those to a part of Schoology so everybody can have a look and be entertained and informed all at once?
Absolutely. So I'll create a folder in there, which I'm just doing at the minute, and I'll upload everyone's in there so you can have a read or a listen or a look at what your colleagues have created. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I said I was going to give away some prizes, and gee, there was a lot of great stuff in there. I could have given away lots of prizes, but I've managed to narrow it down to the three that are going to get prizes. As I say, some others, got really high marks, but just for a few little reasons, these ones were picked out as outstanding. So the most engaging, and probably could have won a couple of others as well on this one, Andrew Burbridge from up in Queensland with a fantastic video on active advanced warning signs, and I highly encourage you all to have a look at that one. It's a bit of a hidden talent, as I said in the comment, Andrew, and his film editing, and I found it very, very entertaining and informative and technically accurate. The most creative one we're going to give to Chris. Chris, for his sign support structure, video poster style thing. The creativeness was the printout of a poster and then videoing around the poster as you talk. And I liked it, very entertaining. So again, another great one to have a look at. And technically accurate is going to Adrian for Roundabouts versus Traffic Signals podcast, and some very good fundamental information in there. So as I say, wonderful work from everybody, and it's a bit of fun to have a look at these and see how other people put them together and get a few little bits of ideas on some of the road safety engineering, road safety infrastructure, and road safety auditing. So well done to those three, but well done to everybody on their assignments. So Kathy, add those prizes into those packs.
Okay.
You are going to have another assignment at the end of this module, and it's a fairly quick assignment. I know some of you spent a little bit of time on the last assignment. This one hopefully shouldn't take you too long at all, and I'll introduce it at the end of this session. And it's starting to get us into the practice of road safety auditing and writing up or looking for issues in designs and writing them up in the sort of convention that we believe helps the project managers and the designers. So that's, yeah, as I say, I'll explain it more as we go. But Jamie, do you want to, do I need to unlock you from share or allow you to share? I think I need to allow you to share, don't I?
You do, yes, please.
Just work out how I do that. Here we go. Sorry, everybody. Just give us a second here. All right. Excellent. So why don't you...
How's that look?
Oh, that looks good. And why don't you, I'll start the first couple of slides here, Jamie. So maybe jump onto the next one, and then I'll hand it over to you after I introduce you. So this module is really all about those sort of detailed design or concept design or design stage road safety audits. And later on after Jamie, we're going to have Tony Bull, who will talk about the construction site temporary traffic management style audits. Jamie will be talking a bit about design vehicles, checking vehicles, common issues with swept paths, sight distance of its many varieties, and just common road safety issues. And then when Tony comes on, we'll have a bit of a chat about the difference between some of those other important safety features of construction sites and the processes we have. So compliance auditing or surveillance checks, but also then auditing of traffic management plans, guidance schemes and the like. And we'll identify some of the common issues in construction there. And I'll round it off by just touching on the checklists available in the Australia's Guide to Road Design, Australia's Guide to Road Safety Part 6, and how to use those, and introduce you to your topic. So jump on to the next slide there, Jamie. And there he is, Jamie, in the photo of him. And we've even put Jamie's contact details in there because if you do come up with some questions that we don't manage to get to during the session, we encourage you to follow up with Jamie, have a bit of technical discussion about the specific aspects. As you can see there, Jamie's been in the industry quite a long time, senior road safety auditor in quite a number of jurisdictions, and does a huge number of audits, and especially the very technical and detailed design audits, and making sure that we've really checked those for any potential hazards, and providing good recommendations when we get those big design sets with all the pages. And Jamie was the technical lead for traffic and design for Vic Roads for quite a period of time, and then came to Safe System Solutions about 6 years ago, I think, almost. And does a variety of things associated with road safety barriers, safe system assessments, detail. So I'm going to hand it over to Jamie, and as per usual, I will be in the background monitoring the chat. So please pop your questions in and I'll feed those to Jamie as we go. Over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Ken. Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to talk about the differences between road safety auditing and design reviews or standards reviews. The beauty of being a road safety auditor is that you can look at a proposal just through a road safety lens. There's certainly some overlap between these two different processes, but a standards review really is about identifying departures from standards, and those departures may not have a safety disbenefit. Whereas a road safety auditor needs to put themselves in the shoes of the road users that are expected to use a particular piece of road or an intersection, and think about how they might interact with all of the different design features associated with that particular project. For any particular design standard, there is often a range of acceptable values, minimums, desirable, and so on. It's where we combine lots of minimum standards that we can get ourselves into trouble. So even a design that is too standard may not necessarily be safe. And on the other hand, a design that is not to standard is not necessarily unsafe. We need to think about how that design might be in terms of real life scenarios for the different road users out there on the network. When we're doing a design stage road safety audit, we'll have a set of design drawings, and if we're at the detailed end of the scale, that drawing package could be pretty extensive. It's all those drawings expected or required to construct the project. We could be talking hundreds of pages of design information, but on top of that, you may even want more. And I encourage any auditor to seek any extra information from their client that they think might help them understand the context of the project and how the design has been arrived at. Some of the important stuff that you need to know is what are the design vehicles that have been adopted in the design. Now, a design vehicle is basically the largest vehicle that you'd expect to use that piece of road on a regular basis. A couple of examples there: a service vehicle, which is something like a garbage truck. That might be an appropriate choice in an urban environment. On a more major road, in an urban or rural environment, we might want to design to a large truck, perhaps a B double. So know your design vehicle. Another term that we sometimes use is checking vehicle. That's a larger vehicle again than your design vehicle. And it's intended to represent vehicles that might come along once in a while to negotiate that intersection. And a checking vehicle is not expected to negotiate the roadway or the intersection in such a desirable way. It might be escorted or under traffic management. The vehicle might mount curbs and do some things that are generally undesirable because of the low frequency of those movements. We accept that. And it might influence things like the placement of roadside furniture to ensure that large vehicle doesn't track into areas that we've put necessary roadside furniture. We need to know our speed environment. What's our design speed for the project, which is not necessarily the same as our posted speed limit. In rural situations, it's common to to adopt a design speed that's greater than our intended posted speed. And that's because in rural environments, our operating speeds are typically that little bit higher. You may receive some vehicle swept path diagrams, and they should be prepared as an integral part of the design process where we're dealing with intersections particularly. And if a designer can't readily produce those, that's a bit of a red flag. Traffic data is an important consideration. That might include numbers of pedestrians and cyclists and so on. Crash history of the site. There's some differing opinions among auditors as to whether it's a good idea to review the crash history. Some believe that you don't want to do that because you might get the blinkers on and think that only the crash problems that have existed in the past will continue into the future. Personally, I do like to understand the crash history, and often crashes and safety issues are the drivers of the types of projects that we're auditing. If there are any previous audit reports, it's nice to have those. It can be an educational thing to understand what another auditor has picked up and think about whether you agree with those things or not. And it's also good to tick off any previous findings that might have been adopted as the design has progressed. Some common issues that you might encounter doing design stage audits. You might find that the design vehicles and the swept paths aren't what they should be. So the design may not cater for an appropriate design vehicle. You might establish that when you're out on site. You might see some changes in land use in the vicinity of the project that might be generating some larger trucks, something like that. So your design vehicle could be any sort of truck that you can imagine, from the smaller service vehicle right up to a large B double or even greater. So what's the problem if it doesn't cater to those larger vehicles? Some of the issues you might encounter are large vehicles encroaching into areas that they shouldn't be. It might be adjacent traffic lanes, perhaps an opposing traffic lane, a pedestrian area. You might have conflicts between opposing traffic within an intersection. You might see impacts with roadside furniture if insufficient space is provided for those larger vehicles. So larger vehicles, trucks, buses and the like really do dictate the design of our intersections. They affect a lot of your geometric layout horizontally and vertically. sight distance requirements and so on are often based on the largest vehicles expected to use a piece of road. You can go the other way, however, and design to too large a vehicle. And if you're doing that, you're going to end up with excessive areas of pavement, which can lead to some undesirable things like smaller vehicles cutting corners at excessive speed. The Austroads guides provide a lot of guidance around designing to larger vehicles in particular and their swept paths. You can see some excerpts there from the Austroads suite of guides. On the right, we have a typical swept path diagram, which looks to be for a semi-trailer. In the past, we used to use transparencies of diagrams like that, and you'd see designers doing all sorts of funny things, placing those transparencies on plans and turning them around in all sorts of angles. Now it's typical to use CAD software, auto turn or the like to generate swept path diagrams. And I'll show you some examples of those shortly. There is quite a selection of swept path diagrams, even for each design vehicle. There is a different swept path for a range of different speeds and turning radii. And you can see there, this particular one, if you look closely, is for a 20-metre turn radius, which equates to a turning speed of something like 15 to 20 kilometres per hour. So that's the type of turn radius and speed that we would like to provide for a turn movement where there's not a mandatory stop. We can wind things down to tighter radii and slower speeds in some situations where we need to, and particularly where a vehicle might be expected to stop at a stop condition, for instance. On the left, we've got another example of requirements around providing clearances between turning vehicles. Here's a swept path diagram generated by software like AutoTurn. You can see there is a swept path for a truck approaching from the right and with lots of purple lines happening there, and another one from the left. There are lots of lines, and it's important to know what you're looking at. In the software, you can turn on and off the different lines you can see there and apply different line styles and all sorts of different presentation things. The important lines to be mindful of are the outermost parts of the swept path of the vehicle body. So these are some of these solid lines that you can see on the outsides of the swept paths. In this case, there's also another parallel line on the outside, which is a clearance. The Austroads guides ask for a 1/2 metre clearance between the outermost part of the vehicle body and roadside features like curbs and road furniture. So we have the outermost part of the vehicle body, a clearance shown. We've also got the centre line of the vehicle, and some of those dashed lines, I think, are wheel paths. So they can be confusing things to look at. And the thing I want to point out here is the little sort of arrowheads that you can see it dotted along that vehicle centre line. They're a bit of a telltale sign that this hasn't been drawn in the way that it should have been. The desirable way for a vehicle to turn is to do that on a single radius curve. So in this case, each of those little arrowheads basically represents a change in direction. So it's not the way that we would like to design an intersection, that someone would have to make the turn in this way. There's a sharp little turn happening here, straightening up, another turn, and then out of the curve. So that's not by the book. It's conveniently been drawn to provide a clearance between the opposing swept paths that you can see in the middle there. Had that been drawn in a desirable way with a radius of 15 or 20 metres, something like that, you would have seen quite an overlap between those swept paths. This is obviously a pretty constrained location, and it looks like it's a bit of a backwards design. an intersection has been drawn up that fits just within the available space. And then these swept paths have been plonked on top. An attempt has been made to show that it'll work. The desirable way to go about things is to first draw your swept paths, determine what space is needed for larger vehicles to negotiate the intersection, and then design your curbs around that. You can see some very minimal clearance at the corner of the intersection. So that's something that might be picked up in a road safety audit. There's not enough space here to accommodate a footpath, and that pedestrians would be required to be either on the roadway or at least in very close proximity to moving traffic. The lack of clearance between opposing trucks making right turns is an issue here. A standards review type finding might be that the conduit proposed between the signal pits there is outside the road reserve, which is not something that we would do. Obviously, it doesn't impact on safety though.
Jamie, I'm just going to encourage everybody to ask their questions to bring it in. But if you go back to that one, I'll just ask one as we're ticking along. In a situation like this, if it is heavily constrained like that, well, are there any options if the vehicles are going to overlap and you can't, afford to take somebody's property or the like? Are there any options?
If this is the way the intersection had to be, you could manage that conflict through signal phasing, by split phasing the approaches to ensure that you didn't have those two movements operating concurrently. So that'd be one way to go about it. The risk associated with this issue, probably largely relates to the likelihood of two large vehicles arriving at the intersection at the same time. So in assessing the risk of this issue, you need to think about the types of vehicles making these movements and how frequent it be, and think about how likely this situation would be. In terms of the potential outcome, you would hope that the drivers of those heavy vehicles would anticipate that situation before it happened and put on the brakes and avoid a collision, or at least wash off some speed. So probably this is not the type of issue that you would risk rate highly, but it's certainly from a design point of view not something that you would want to see.
Thanks, Jamie. And keep those questions or comments coming in, please, everybody.
Here's another example of some swept path diagrams. And this is a design that we at Safe System Solutions inherited. And we had our concerns that it wouldn't cater to the buses that are expected to make the movements here. When we put on some swept paths drawn in a desirable way, it was evident that it wasn't the case that they could negotiate that intersection in a desirable way. You can see the blue swept path here really cutting the corner and encroaching into some pedestrian areas and even the staircase here. This is quite a transparent swept path in that the turning radius is nominated. There aren't any of those arrowheads. You can see that the centre line of the vehicle path is on a nice, smooth, single radius through the turn. So that's the type of swept path that you would like to see. Again, we've got the same lines shown there, and it's a bit easier to see here. We've got the outermost edge of the vehicle here and here. Then we've got that 1/2 metre clearance on either side. If we look at some other movements at this intersection, there's a potential conflict between vehicles turning left in and right out of the side road with quite a bit of overlap here. A site inspection is a key part of any audit, and you might be thinking that, well, we're doing design stage audits, so we're considering design plans, but the vast majority of design projects are upgrades to existing road situations. So on the most part, we can put ourselves out on the ground, look at and observe the road users and the current road user behaviour, and pick up some of these issues. And a telltale sign of an intersection not catering to larger vehicles might be signs of tracking behind curbs, as we can see here. Another example, and it is difficult to see the curb here, and perhaps that's part of the problem, but there's evidence of larger vehicles coming towards us, encroaching onto this island. You can see the wheel paths coming out here, over the pedestrian crossing point here. So any pedestrian at this location is potentially in danger. However, again, you would hope that the driver, if a pedestrian was present, would choose not to drive on this alignment. It's probably more likely that a pedestrian on the other side of the crossing would be in danger, and that's because it's more difficult for the drivers of heavy vehicles to understand where the rear of their vehicles will end up, and when they make a turn, it's typical for the rear of the vehicle to track on the inside of the prime mover. The issue here may relate to a lack of delineation. There's next to no contrast between the concrete pavement and the island. I've also had it suggested that at this location, which is in Port Melbourne, that excessive speeds are an issue. So there might be other things at play rather than a lack of space. Another telltale sign that a design hasn't catered to the space requirements for turning vehicles. Signs knocked down, it's a common occurrence on our network. Again, there might be other contributing factors like a lack of delineation. Sightlines. Now, we talked about road safety audits being not a standards review, but this certainly is one area where there is a list of standards as long as your arm relating to sight distances. There are all sorts of different sight distance requirements. You might have heard of ASD, SSD, crossing sight distance, safe entering sight distance, all these type of things. There's a whole list of sight distance requirements to provide basically enough space and time for road users to make the movements that they're required to do. The differences between some of those requirements relate to the heights at which the sight distance requirement is measured from and to, and these are all spelled out in the Austroads guides. But on top of that, you really want to be thinking about sight distance when you're out on site. Think about where pedestrians might be looking to cross a road. Think about if you're entering in a vehicle from a side road, whether you feel like you have enough time and space to view approaching traffic and to enter an intersection. If you're not comfortable doing those things, then consult your relevant guidelines and try and quantify the issue. It's often the case that sight lines are impeded by things at the roadside. It might be parked vehicles, pieces of road furniture, trees, and so on. The road alignment can restrict your sight distance. So something that looks okay in plan view, when you get out on site and realise that the vertical alignment's up and down, your sight distance might not be quite what you expect. One of our sight distance requirements goes by the abbreviation SISD. Perhaps we can give out a prize, Ken, to the person that can first give us what SISD stands for.
Oh, yeah. Very good. SISD. First one to put it in the chat wins a prize. Safe intersection sight distance. They're coming in thick and fast, but who
And
was
the winner?
we have a winner, which is Joshua. Joshua,
Well done.
first in, and a lot of people got it, but Joshua was the first. So adding a prize there.
So SISD, safe intersection sight distance, is a requirement at intersections, and it basically provides enough time and space for a vehicle approaching the intersection on the major road to see a vehicle from the side road enter the intersection and potentially stall. It gives them enough time to react to that situation, put on the brakes, and come to a stop before a collision. So the numbers that we're talking about here are pretty long. In a high-speed environment, 100 k's per hour, it's something like 260 metres. So it can be quite an onerous requirement. And in some circles, it's sort of considered non-mandatory and perhaps a nice to have, but it's certainly something that you should strive to achieve. At the corners of intersections, there are often roadside features like trees and poles, perhaps parked cars that will obstruct our sight lines and mean that our SISD is not available. We need to think horizontally and vertically about SISD. As I mentioned, crests can impede sight distance. So if you've got a crest at play, you need to get out your long section and make sure that adequate sight distance will be available. Another thing that I'll point out here is that little requirement here. This is an excerpt from the Austroads Guide, part 4A. We've got a little requirement here about where our SISD is measured from, and it nominates a 0.5 metres back from the hold line. The VicRoads supplement to this Austroads Guide says something a little bit different. It says we measure 7 metres back from this conflict point, and that takes a little bit of the ambiguity out of the situation where we've got a left turn lane and our pavement in here might be wider than our typical lane width. So it's important to always consult the supplement to the Austroads Guide for your jurisdiction. Those supplements do take precedent over the Austroads Guide. Here's an example of a little project in northern Melbourne where we had a lane that operated as a 4-lane road due to its wide cross-section. There was a desire to stop that sort of behaviour and to formalise parking along this road. So you can see some yellow lines there. That was where it was proposed to create a parking lane with a solid edge line terminating 10 metres back from the intersection on either side in accordance with guidelines. This project was implemented, and you can see there parking up close to the intersection. All good and well until a car jumps out from behind those parked vehicles. And not long after this project was implemented, a different crash problem emerged involving intersection crashes with people entering the main road from side roads due to a lack of sight distance to oncoming traffic. So it is important to consider the effects of parked vehicles in your sight distance assessments. If those parked vehicles weren't there, you could certainly see an oncoming vehicle from a long way back. What are some things that we might do now to try and correct this situation and improve safety for people entering from the side road?
Thanks, Jamie. We'll see if anybody's got any ideas on some, I suppose as an auditor, recommendations you might make for people to have a think about. So we've got some coming in talking about removing first 2 car parks, the addition of yellow lines, I suppose, to reinforce some no parking areas. Let's see if any others come in with some ideas on how do we improve the sight lines there. So we've got some more parking prohibition and some curb extensions as an idea as well. Reducing the speed on the main road. A couple of more people who are fans of this idea of a curb out stand, extending the hold line, and some more parking restrictions and clearways and the like. So any of those take your fancy?
Yeah,
Jay?
no, pretty much all of them can. Certainly removing some parking would be great. That would open up sight lines. There's often a lot of challenges associated with doing that. A great outcome here would be to construct a curb out stand, as a few people have mentioned. So extending this curb line out, we would still be doing away with a car park or two. We'd be reducing the pedestrian crossing distance here too. So there'd be lots of benefits associated with doing an outstand. Constructing an outstand out to here would enable us to bring forward that hold line as well on the side road. So that'd really make the intersection that bit more compact, reduce our conflict areas, and even further open up sight lines by bringing the hold line forward. There's a list of some of our key sight distance requirements. So you might have heard some of these terms: stopping sight distance and approach sight distance. They are numerically equal, the difference being that stopping sight distance is from driver eye height to some object on the road, and the assumed object height is 0.2 metres. Approach sight distance is intended to allow drivers to see road markings. So it's measured to a height of 0 to the road surface itself. So approach sight distance is particularly important at intersections. Stopping sight distance is something that we like to provide continually along a route. Entering sight distance is a nice to have, and it provides enough time and space for a driver on the minor road to enter a major road and not require traffic on the major road to slow down. So that requires some particularly long distances and is not something that is typically designed to, but if you have that luxury, it's a nice to have. The list goes on. Manoeuvre sight distance, there are sight distance requirements relating to pedestrians, crossing sight distance, overtaking sight distance. So I refer you to the Austroads Guides Part 3 and 4 in particular for detailed descriptions of the different sight distance requirements. But I really encourage you again to put yourself out on site in all those critical locations where sight distance might be an issue. Think about all those things that are happening out on site, roadside objects that might impede sight lines, and think about how comfortable you would find it to cross the road or enter a road as a driver or another road user. There is a different suite of issues that we typically encounter on unsealed roads in particular. And a lot of those relate to the different surface conditions that we encounter. Weather can have a big impact on the surface of an unsealed road and cause rutting and the like. As a general rule, an unsealed surface provides less traction than a sealed surface. We do see lower speeds on the whole, but when things do go wrong, there's less opportunity for a vehicle to correct their vehicle, recover their vehicle, and avoid running off the road. So some typical treatments to counter issues on rural unsealed roads would be delineation improvements, especially at locations like curves where we know that people are vulnerable to leaving the road. Warning signs to alert people to changes in conditions, changes in road surfaces, waterway crossings, and the like. there is an infinite list of possible issues that you might encounter undertaking a road safety audit. There's a list there of a number of the big ones, certainly ones that we find crop up on a regular basis. Many of these are covered in the checklists at the rear of the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6. So especially for people new to auditing, I encourage you to take the relevant checklist, and there are different ones for the different audit stages. Take that out on site with you and make sure that you're checking off a lot of these common issues and thinking about all the right things.
Jamie, we've got a question that's come in, and I'm going to add to it. So the question's, would an auditor be expected to perform a numerical check for site distances, or is it enough to observe that some site distance requirements may be suboptimal? And my, I suppose, addition to that is around the swept paths and the swept path diagrams, where if you are not given swept path diagrams or you're suspicious about them, would you be expected to run your own swept paths?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I guess every auditor plays to their strengths, and someone who has strengths in design and things like site distance might be inclined to do a numerical check. You're not obligated to as an auditor, but particularly at the detailed design end, you should be numerically checking site distance things. At earlier design stages, it's probably more of a high level look at things because the design hasn't developed to a point where you can assess it in great detail. On swept path diagrams, if you have any suspicion about a design not catering to the vehicles that it should, I encourage you to request swept path diagrams. And if they can't be provided readily, that's a bit of a red flag. They should have been undertaken as part of the design process. And it's often the case that you will receive them anyway as part of a design package. Sometimes projects come about because of issues related to site distance or perhaps a change in vehicle type. And where that's the case, you might target your audit a bit more around those particular issues. So really understand the drivers behind the project that you're auditing, and that might steer you towards paying closer attention to certain things like site distance.
Thanks. And I suppose that that brings up something that I just want to sort of chuck in there. Certainly as a road safety auditor, when I get those detailed designs, I really do heavily rely on getting Jamie or Reese or another colleague who is a very, has been a designer and done many years of that sort of work to be there as part of the audit team with me. So we get a sort of holistic look at these things, and that way I can sort of say, oh, Jamie, can you run the swept paths on that and just check it out, or can you do those calculations, and we can get an indication of those sorts of things.
So again, here's a list of some of those common issues. If there are any questions on in particular ones that people are interested in, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I may just hand pick a few and talk to them. See-through effect, the first cab off the rank, that's a typical cause of intersection crashes, and it might be in an urban or a rural environment. And see-through effect, it's an issue across intersections where the road that is required to yield might give the impression to motorists that that is in fact the continuing road. And that might be because the roadside environment is unchanged through an intersection. You might have rows of trees and poles and things that give the impression to a motorist that they in fact have the right of way. So things you might do about that include delineation improvements on the side road approaches, installing splitter islands, things to alert drivers to the need to yield to people on the priority route. It certainly is a common black spot project treatment. Any questions coming there, Ken?
No, nobody's quite picked on to any of those. Maybe what's a Danish offset crossing? Or do you want me to explain that one, Jamie?
I'll have a crack, Ken, and you can chime in too. Danish offset is something that we often see where we have pedestrian crossings that pass through a median, and the crossing is staggered through the median such that people are facing towards approaching traffic before they cross that second carriageway. So if we have sufficient width in a median, that is a nice thing to do. So that's basically a left-right stagger. I hope that makes sense, which sees people crossing through a median facing towards oncoming traffic, as opposed to staggering it the other way with a right-left stagger, which would see people about to cross the road while looking away from approaching traffic.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, maybe we can jump on to the next one, which are the mid-block section issues.
So in mid-block situations, issues are typically about roadside hazards and cross-section elements. So we're thinking about, do we have hazards at the roadside, or how hazardous is our roadside? Are we catering to all the road users that we need to? Do we have appropriate cycle facilities, pedestrian facilities? Is our drainage appropriate? And all of these type of things. So mid-block lengths are typically consistent along routes. So it's often the case that the majority of our issues in audits do come up at intersections, but it's where we have hazards at the roadside in particular that mid-block issues arise.
We're going to go back one, Jamie, and can I get you to explain back of queue issues?
Yeah, back of queue issues. It's an issue that leads to rear end crashes in particular. It might be that we've introduced a new intersection, a set of signals, or even a roundabout where people are now required to stop. On the whole, that is a safety improvement, but we've introduced a traffic queue where people might not have otherwise have expected one, and we can have rear end crashes. We also see it on freeways where when a freeway reaches capacity at a mid-block location, we might have some turbulence that leads to queuing, and we see rear end crashes or vehicles not anticipating a queue and evading the back of a queue at sometimes high speeds and getting into trouble.
Thanks. And any sort of treatment ideas, recommendations for these back of queue type issues?
Yeah, delineation, measures to warn motorists. If we're talking an intersection, perhaps a new intersection, we need to ensure that motorists are familiar with the changing conditions. We can use high skid resistant pavement in locations where we might expect queues to develop and people to have to put on the brakes. Freeway situations, really the most we can do is measures to address flow breakdown, things like ramp metering and the like.
And Andrew has jumped up and down to suggest active advanced warning sign with queue detection because he's part of his video. Well, his video is on active advanced warning signs, and it's a good treatment. So watch the video, which Kathy has uploaded to Schoology.
I like it.
Good. All right, well, let's see if there are any other questions that come in for Jamie on any of those topics. And I'll reinforce there, Jamie's, covered off a few issues. By no means is that everything. The checklist, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about at the end of this session, are there to help guide you, especially as a new auditor, to make sure you're thinking about all these broad range of issues. But you do have to be open to looking at the site and seeing if there's anything else, or looking at the design and understanding it. We don't have any other questions coming in at the moment, Jamie, so I'll thank you for your time on that, and I'll probably jump in to talk a little bit about checklists while we see if Tony is going to come along. Otherwise, I'll happily. Oh no, Tony's there. Wow, he snuck in on me. I didn't see that. So thank you, Jamie, and to everybody out there. As I said, Jamie's details are on the slide, or you can contact Jamie through myself. And yeah, thank you very much. I suppose one thing, sorry, before I go, just Jamie, recommendations for people new to auditing if they do get the very detailed design set. What would your comments be around that?
Yeah, it's always important in any audit to have an audit team, and it depends on the nature of the project as to what experience and design experience you need in that team. At the detailed end of the process, it's all that more important to have someone who has the design background and knows what they're looking at in terms of the intricacies of design.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. I think I heard a chicken in the background as well. It's laid an egg or something at the farm there. So I'll leave you to it.
Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Okay, so from Jamie, we move over to Tony Bull, and yes, some of you may have come across Tony during his years in the road safety game, especially around the construction site and temporary traffic management. Tony works for the Victorian government, and now the name of his role changes on me quite often, so I've always got to be a little bit careful. Program Manager of Maintenance, is that still correct, Tony?
Correct, Ken.
Good, good. And Tony certainly sits on a whole raft of different committees, Austroads committees, Australian Standard committees and things associated with temporary traffic management. Extremely passionate about getting those work sites, construction sites safe for workers and road users. So Tony's pre-recorded quite a bit, because when we told Tony he's got a short session, he said, I've got a lot to say. And so we said, Tony, you can pre-record some and people can have a look at that in their own time. So there's a much longer presentation, but we did want Tony to come in, do a few things live and answer any questions. So over to you, Tony, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to share your slides. If not, I'll fix that. Yeah, that's looking good. Yes, there it is.
Now, what if I do this now, though, Ken?
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps I should have put it in presentation mode first.
No, it'll be all right. Just go up to the top there where it says display settings. And
so have you got the presentation without anything else?
No, we're seeing the presenter view. So if you go up to display settings up the top there in the middle of your presentation.
Yep.
And there's a drop down.
Yep.
I think it's to the left. I'm not sure you're quite on it. Display settings, drop down and say swap presenter mode. It's in the PowerPoint itself, not in Zoom. Yeah, there we go. Got it.
Excellent. Alrighty, away we go. Okay, thank you very much, Ken, and welcome everybody. How many people have we got online, Ken, for this session?
We have about 16.
Nice. 15
or 16, and from we've got some Queenslanders, South Australian, and Victorians.
Excellent.
Oh, and New Zealanders, I should say.
Oh, very, very good. We are crossing that ditch, so that's lovely to see. All right, thanks very much, Ken, and welcome everybody. As Ken said, my name's Tony Bull. In a about a month's time, I will have racked up 37 years with the Victorian government, well, it's Department of Transport now, but we were Vic Roads for a long time. And, I've been on, had many different roles within the department. I've been on many when I say a handful of international projects, all to do with worksite safety. And as Ken mentioned, I've on a couple of Austroads committee, we're currently looking at national harmonisation for training and also pre-qualification for across Australia. So there are a couple of challenging ones because each state has their own systems currently, and some are managed by WorkSafe or help managed by WorkSafe and the like. So there's a few things to work through, but it'll be good to come to some agreement in that space so we can cross those borders and we can work within each other states, especially in those border type communities. Also on the Standards Australia Committee for 1742 Part 3, which is our roadworks standard. And yeah, that's what we'll be sort of covering today. I think with that in mind, we'll move on. And so we look at traffic management at a roadwork site and the road safety audit side of it. And I think we've got to understand that we have compliance audits. They look at the code and the Australian standard. Has the temporary traffic management plan been implemented correctly and the like, or planned correctly even. But the road safety audit, it looks beyond that. It looks at the operational side of things. Is the safety of the site being considered? Have we looked at what other hazards have we created because of this implementation of these temporary traffic managements? So this is the very important part about road safety auditors and the audit itself. It's just not looking at the standard and the code. It's looking at the safety features that have been created or need to be considered. Have hazards been created? And the other important bit, and I'm sure Ken has pushed this, is that we've got to make sure it's done by an independent person or an independent team of the actual project. Oftentimes as a project manager, and I've managed many projects over the years, you become a little bit blinkered in your approach in managing it. Sometimes your focus is to get the job completed. But we've got to make sure that no shortcuts are taken to ensure that that the safety side of things are being done correctly. And unfortunately, and I don't want to make this a session where we're talking about where things go wrong, but unfortunately they do. And in Western Australia, a traffic controller was killed while they were undertaking their duty. And here recently, near Ballarat, a traffic worker was killed, unfortunately. And there were circumstances that we don't fully know yet because the investigation hasn't been completed fully. But they parked their vehicle. The sun was might have been in the eyesight of the person travelling. Also, the person had worked a full shift and was travelling home from work. Were they a little bit tired? Maybe not their attention. Was the worker, because he was just starting out the day, was his attention fully, on when they were getting ready to undertake their task? So, it's these safety aspects that we've got to make sure we are identifying, and we can put our industry experience forward to make sure that we are getting those sites that we are undertaking all those safety compliances. The Austroads have just introduced a 10-part series, and you can see at the bottom of the slide there's copies of those on on your USBs that are part of this training course. We've got the 10 parts, and what happened was the Australian standard had a lot of guidance material in it, and it was felt that it's a standard, not guidance. So Austroads said, well, we'll take this on. If there's industry changes that we need, we can then implement those a lot quicker than Australian standards could get changed. So it was done, across all states and in New Zealand, the collaborative approach of putting these together. So it's a really positive step forward in getting the traffic management process and to try and make the sites as safe as possible. And this has been a really good outcome, I think, for the industry. But we still get, unfortunately, instances like this where we just get it wrong. And unfortunately, when we get it so wrong, this is when things can unfortunately cause incidents and the like. The traffic management company here unfortunately did not have enough signs where they could cover up the 100km/h sign. So they thought, well, at least we'll put up the 40. People might slow down to 40, but unfortunately they shouldn't have even commenced work. This was a power core job. And I said to the on-site supervisor at this site, you've got your traffic management is incorrect. You're going to potentially have speeding traffic through here. And he said, oh, it's not my problem. It's the traffic management company. No, it's not. It's everybody's problem. And actually it is the owner of the site's problem. We just can't pass on that responsibility to the traffic management company. We've got to make sure we're working together to make sure our sites are safe. And things like having those different speed zones or speed signs, I should say, just makes it unsafe for everybody. So that type of practice, we've got to make sure that we're working together, and the site owners have got to take that responsibility. Why do we undertake these road safety audits at a construction site? Roadworks sites typically involved a change in speed environment. We've got the additional conflicts and confined road space which can increase the potential for crashes. Traffic arrangement during roadworks can change several times and can bear no resemblance to the permanent arrangements. And you see it so often where some drivers they take this travel path day in, day out, and all of a sudden we introduce another set of signs and ways of driving, and all of a sudden it can become confusing. So we've got to make sure the message is clear, the defined path is clear, and we can make it safe for everybody to get through that site safely. The audits at a design stage can give little indication to the safety of the temporary work. So while it is a positive to undertake an audit at the design stage, until implementation, we don't truly know how the system is going to work. So it's important that we do have that road safety audit undertaken. Construction contractors may not appreciate the finer points of traffic management, and that's the bit I was making about the power core with the two different signs. We've got to make sure that the contractors do understand the safety risks, and to ensure that they understand that their obligation to operate safely in our roadwork environment to ensure that everybody's safety is being considered. We've got to check that the standard arrangements are applied for consistency. We've got to assess whether standard arrangements are adequate for a particular or for our particular circumstances and conditions. We've got to avoid conflicting messages from the permanent and the temporary devices, and even our lines and lines and signs and delineation and that type of thing. The site can become very confusing if you've got curve alignment markers, you've got your delineation for the travel path, we've got guideposts, we've got other signs saying it's a tight curve, we've got speed restrictions for the curve we're working on. It's a permanent sign, but we want it slower than that. You've got the black on yellow versus the regulatory signs. So we've got to make sure our message is clear, that people can understand it, and they travel to the conditions that they're coming across. We've got to make sure that signs are used for their correct purposes. We've got to provide safety for works personnel as well as the travelling public. We've got to undertake those risk assessments, those hazard assessments, to ensure that we look at all the risks. Have we mitigated the risk to a level that it is safe for our workers to work on that particular site? and have we mitigated the risk to ensure the safety of the, the pedestrians, the cyclists, the people in the cars? We've got trucks that take longer to stop and the like. So we've got to take all those things into consideration to ensure that the site is managed safely. And unfortunately, a few sites are not going to do that. We can put up our worker symbolic. We can put up our road worker heads. We can reduce the speed to 40 kilometres an hour or even lower. But are we actually providing a safe environment? What can be done to ensure that the speed is reduced to that speed that we want to make sure the worker's safety is not being compromised? By putting out a 40k an hour sign is not going to achieve that. And this is the real point of concern as for designers, for the people implementing, and those companies that probably don't fully understand the requirements to make a site safe, that they think, oh, well, we'll just whack out 40k an hour, we'll be right. Unfortunately, it's not the case. We've got to ensure that those travelling public that, as I said earlier, day in, day out, they travel that site at 100 kilometres an hour, and all of a sudden we've changed that environment. Are they actually going to slow down to 40 kilometres an hour because we need them, because our workers are close to the road? We might have to put up extra delineation. We might have to do cone spacing or bollard spacings even tighter to give you that confined space feeling that forces the motorist to slow down. We might have to put in chicanes to make sure the motorists slow down. Therefore, the 40k an hour sign can be achieved, but we've got to make sure we implement other processes and devices and the like to make sure it does happen. We ensure that any connection or crossing point for works and traffic and public traffic is safe. If we've got these points for the pedestrians to cross, if we've got points where we want the traffic to cross a haul road, or where we are hauling out the claimed material and the like, let's make sure those points are safe as well. And as I mentioned, we sometimes a job can be so straightforward that we think, oh, well, we've got some cracking in a footpath that we need to replace that particular section. Oh, yeah, we'll just put up some bunting and, happy days, we'll fill that tomorrow. But what about the pedestrians from the hours that we're not there? How are they meant to get around that site? We've got to make sure that our planning ensures that safety requirement, because that was photo where I took that. There was a motel, there was a hotel, there was shopping precinct up the top of the hill. That we've got to provide that safe environment for those pedestrians that we need to provide. Whether they're on scooters, and maybe a quick question for the group: what in the pedestrian group don't signs work for? And I'm not sure, Ken, I can see any answers. You might have to do a bit of screening for me.
I'll read them as they come in. Do you want to just repeat the question there?
So the question is, what pedestrians would signs and that device that we've got in front of us would not even be beneficial?
Okay, we've got vision impaired.
There, spot on. Let's hand out a chocolate frog to that person, please, Ken.
Okay, will do. It's actually heading over the ditch, so it will have
nice.
their pack. That one's to Ken from New Zealand, another Ken.
And these are the things that we unfortunately we've got to make sure that our compliance to look after all people in our communities. People on scooters, they would not get through that site. The visually impaired would get totally bamboozled on where they could go. We've got parents with prams or little kids on little bikes. They would not be able to get through that site safely. Yet it was such a straightforward job where we had to just change some, add in a new section of concrete. So the planning to ensure that the site is safely managed for all users, and this is the real top a role for a road safety audit. It's even just the signing, stop here on red signal. It's actually a major traffic control item sign, so therefore it should have the red writing on the white background. you know, the manufacturer thought, oh, well, most signs are black writing on yellow background. Let's make them like that. That's a non-compliant sign. So, you know, it's even little things like that we should be picking up as road safety auditors. I'll pose another quick question to Ken. Looking at those two signs, apart from the shape, can anybody tell me the difference between those two stop signs? Yes,
Okay,
we have to stop, but what is the main difference between those two stop signs?
So not the shape and not the size of the text or something like that, eh?
No, there's well, yeah, under our road rules, there's a complete difference.
Okay.
Where do we actually see those two stop signs might even be help the answer.
Yeah, so we've got a few people who have identified where they see the right one at traffic control and lollipop sign, as has been referred to here. But do you want a bit more information than that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, what's the under the road rules? Who makes the decision at either of those signs is probably giving a little bit more information.
We'll see if anybody pops in a little bit of an idea on that. Yeah, well, there's an example, isn't it?
Example of using the round or the octagonal.
Okay.
And if some of the people that may have typing skills like myself, Ken, that it might be a long-winded answer and taking a while to get through.
We're certainly getting some that are around the right answer. Traffic controller has the ability to stop traffic when they wish using the right sign.
That's getting very close. That's correct.
Yeah. And
yeah, I look at in a roundabout way. I think, and for the sake of time, yeah, that is close enough. To identify the difference between the octagonal and the round one is if who makes the decision at the octagonal. We come across that at an intersection. We see that stop sign. We must stop. We must give way. Then the driver decides that they can proceed. Whereas with the round one, when it's displayed in the driver's eyes, then the driver must stop and remain stopped until they are indicated otherwise that they can proceed or the sign is no longer displayed. So, and that's why we can't use that stop sign to do traffic control, but because the motorist can say, well, there's nothing coming, I'm going to proceed, and they wouldn't be breaking the law. But that's why we've got the round one to manage the traffic at our work sites. Am I running for time, Ken?
Yeah, another 10 minutes or so is fine.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. Good, good. So when to audit? And this is a really interesting question and I would encourage that if it's a complex type works or, major projects, that you do look at the designs or the drawings that have been the traffic management plan that's being proposed, that you do a desktop audit. I think it is worth that undertaking that could be identified. Certainly when the site has been implemented or the traffic management plan has been implemented, very early in that time frame, I would recommend getting a road safety audit undertaken. And the thing about whether it's a desktop or even just a early in the construction period, that you do visit the site. That's a must, but also you do a day and nighttime visit, because nighttime the environment really changes. The ambient lights and whatever else could be around that may be a distraction for what signing you have put up or proposing to put up is very, very important. So, yeah. And just while I reckon another question to the group, Ken, would be worthwhile. What's the difference between a traffic management plan, TMP, and a TGS, traffic guidance scheme?
Okay.
Yep, sorry.
Yep, so I was just going to repeat it. Difference between a traffic guidance scheme and a traffic management plan.
Yep. Yep. So as I said, you've got to do the daytime inspection, the nighttime inspection, and to look for those safety features that are maybe being compromised or should be looked at. And it's a good idea to understand the guidance material, the Austroads material, the Australian standard, to understand what are those requirements, but it's those safety issues at the site that the road safety audit needs to be focused on. Oh, excuse me.
So we've got some answers coming in. We've got traffic management plan details the work, traffic guidance scheme is the drawing of traffic control.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. Next one's traffic management plan sets out the methodology, when and what, and traffic guidance scheme is, sorry, the traffic management plan sets out the methodology, when and what traffic guidance scheme will be used, traffic impact, etc. And the TGS is the drawing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, you put those two together and you probably, like the TGS, the traffic guidance scheme, is the drawing. That's the set of signs for a particular point in time. The traffic management plan is the hazard assessment that's been undertaken, the risk assessment, what impacts will be there to business. It's around the planning of the whole job. What staging are we going to undertake? What are the impacts if emergency vehicles need to get through our sites? Are we going to impact school runs, bus stops, tram stops, all of those? It's the planning of the job and how we're going to control any of those issues that we come across through that planning. To the point where you might just, what emergency numbers do you need at site to ensure that that we aren't that we can contact people, that it might be the bus companies and the like. So it's just having the detail of the job, the planning of the works, and the staging. And from that, we will have our traffic guidance schemes. We'll have stage 1, 2, 3, many different stages. When we're doing contraflow, when we're changing from one side of the road to the other, when we're going to be doing the drainage works, when we're going to be doing the pavement works. It's all those different drawings that we may need or will be using within the life of the project. So yeah, no, good answers. Well done. So we'll move on to now just some common issues that we come across. A road safety audit of the temporary traffic works might typically address issues like adequacy, wow, tongue-tied already, the adequacy of the advance warning. Are we giving the correct message? The thing about traffic management is we're trying to communicate to the road users of what they potentially could come across. How are we going to guide them through the site? And when we're telling them that everything's done and dusted and you can now resume your normal traveling experience. So we look at the proposed speed limits. Have they been correctly looked at, implemented, and are they adequate for the site? The appropriateness of the selected standard layouts. Unfortunately, we could have a manual, it could be this thick of all the different layouts that we could possibly come across, but we don't. And so therefore, just having a standard layout may not be enough. We may have to implement changes to that standard layout to meet the needs of the site. You might be on a straight section of road that pretty straightforward. Then you come across an environment like the Great Ocean Road where rear end of queue issues could be, you need to sign for those. Have we got enough signs to adequately look after the length of queue that we could come across? Have we used temporary traffic signals where, or portable traffic signals, or should we have manually controlled traffic signals where if the queue length is building up of one end, then we can release that queue and hold the other end, that we have that manual control. And I know companies are really looking at getting the traffic controllers off the road, not necessarily out of the job, because you need that control, but they're using devices as boom barriers, electronic controlled stop go bats, stop slow bats. I should never use that stop go, stop slow bats. As I said, boom barriers, or even manually operated portable traffic signals. So you've got still got the control over the traffic when you release the queues or hold the traffic up. But yeah, you can manage the queue length a lot better than just using time fixed portable traffic signals. Conflicts between the permanent and temporary features. I mentioned earlier, line marking, the signing, to make sure that we haven't got those conflicts, because sometimes we have that focus. Oh yeah, we can chuck out a particular sign, but the permanent sign might be in conflict to that. Any aspects of the layout or devices that could be misread by drivers. Are we actually portraying the correct message? And this again is an opportunity for the road safety auditors to have that fresh set of eyes to look at the site, that they're not that project focused. They're actually they're looking at the safety message that we're trying to achieve. The likelihood of mud or dust obscuring devices. Construction brings dust, brings that mud splattering and the like. So have they actually got a process for making sure the signs and devices are cleaned on a regular basis to ensure their effectiveness both day and night? And especially at night, a sign can look as if it's still operational in the daytime, but it's got that smear of dust and mud over it, and it may not have that reflectivity that we need out of that device. The appropriateness of traffic barriers, and have they been correctly installed? That's where the manufacturer's installation criteria needs to be, has it been followed? Have the barriers got the pins in it? If they're water filled, have they got the water in them? Are they, an obsolete item? There's few items that now are obsolete, but they're on the Vic Roads. It is still the Vic Roads website. We haven't got a public domain for the dot site yet, but on the Vic Roads website, you'll find the approved barrier system. So I think you may even have that, Ken, with the information for this session, don't you?
Not for this one, for the barriers course.
Okay, but I would encourage you, as a road safety auditor, that you do check that out, because there are many different providers of safety barriers, and as I said, some are now obsolete and shouldn't be used. The adequate provision for pedestrians, including the less agile ones, which we mentioned earlier. The adequate provision for cyclists. I've been cycling for a few years now, and it's a different world out there, and sometimes you've got to try and work with the drivers because you're not too sure what they're going to do. So at roadworks, it even becomes more difficult to manage cyclists through the site. So we've got to provide for their safety as well. So we've got to take those considerations. And conflict points between works, traffic and the general public, to ensure that we don't have those points where all of a sudden you've got roadwork dump trucks or graders or whatever it might be. We've got the flow of traffic, and all of a sudden we've got the construction traffic, which is interfering with that safety. And Ken mentioned just at the start of this one that he's going to run through the checklist within the road safety documentation. But with the checklist 5, the roadwork traffic scheme audit, this is it gives you some starting points. This isn't the be all and end all of what you should be looking for, but it's prompters that you should be looking at. Excuse me. So, the alignment, the turning radii and tapers, traffic lane safety and visibility, the nighttime safety. Are the devices being maintained? Are they operating correctly as they are designed to do? Access to properties, has that been considered? The safety barriers we mentioned. The question, just ask the site owner, what inspections are you undertaking to ensure that the sites are being managed correctly? And I know a lot of traffic management companies now are taking digital photography, whether it be still or video, of the sites, and you know, it is accepted as evidence of what was there at a point in time. So you know, it's a good question to ask, and also a good undertaking to have that those records. You know, the traffic controls, the work site access, the signs and line marking, the day and night requirements, and you know, the temporary traffic signals, the location, the visibility, the sign display, all of those in that that list are good prompters. But you know, I think that that list could be a lot bigger. But as road safety auditors, you know, you over time you will understand what are the safety issues, what are the things that could cause concern, and to make sure that we are providing a safe environment at our construction sites. So it's really important that we do get those inspections and the audits are undertaken, and we have that fresh set of eyes looking at what potentially could be a safety issue, and we're looking at making sure that they are mitigated. I think that'll do me, Ken. Yeah, I suppose just to finish off, are there any questions that have popped up through the presentation? It's pretty rushed sort of overview of a road safety audit at a construction site. But as you mentioned, you know, I did put together that longer video, and hopefully that gives you some more tools, some more information that you can work with when you're out there in the world of auditing.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, if anybody has any final questions, pop them in now, or feel free to raise your hand, and I can unmute you, and you can talk directly if that's how you would like to go. Yeah, thank you for that, Tony. And funnily enough, with the update to the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, which I'm involved in for Austroads at the moment, where we've all agreed to change the name from checklist to prompt list. You used the term, it's really a prompt list. So you're a step ahead there.
Oh, I think I may have stolen that one off you, Ken.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. Yeah. I like it.
You mentioned that at the last training session that there was a renaming, and you put forward a few different names, and I thought that was quite appropriate. That it just gives us some prompters to what we should be looking for. It's not the be all, and you know, it's not the endless list, but it helps the thought pattern. That's for sure.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, thank you, Tony. I think people will watch the video, and if they do have follow-up questions or the like, I'll be sure to direct them on to you. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Tony. I understand you might even be on leave at the moment, but
yeah, we've got a little bit more freedom, thank goodness, Ken, and took the family up to Halls Gap for a extra long weekend. So today was the recovery day. So, but no, more than happy to be part of this. As you said, you know, it's been part of my working life now, looking at traffic management and trying to make sure the industry is in a way that we can make sure that, you know, safety is the #1 priority. And, you know, under our OH&S Act, we must come home from work in the same condition we went to work in. We might be 8-9 hours older, but you know, that's what we must aspire to make sure that safety is the #1.
Yeah. No, thank you, Tony. It's a really good presentation. I suppose my overarching sort of comment around construction site road safety auditing is it appears to be one of the most litigious parts of the road safety audit. I see the most cases or legal battles going on around work sites and how they've been managed. Do you know why that would be?
Oh, look, and I've been on the other end of it, Ken, where I've had to defend our signing and work practices where unfortunately there was a fatality. And I think it's because we are changing the conditions that people feel that they weren't warned enough. So it becomes probably an easy target, I feel. yeah, the industry probably needs to ensure that, yeah, and that we are operating in a way that we're not just giving traffic management that second rate, putting it as on the back seat against what we're trying to do in the production line. And I've just had recent conversation with a local traffic management company where they felt that the contractor was not treating their staff properly, and they stood up to that contractor, and unfortunately it became a toxic environment because the contractor was not taking that and the safety of the work site seriously enough, and so the traffic management company walked away because they felt that they were exposed to, like you said, there could be the litigious, or it could have been even just the safety of their workers. So I think as an industry, we still have a bit to go. We're certainly improving, but I think that's probably a reason why that there is litigation in that space, because maybe we don't get it right often enough.
All right, thanks, Tony. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this and share your knowledge with the group. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, I'm just going to share my slides now for the last couple of bits of information in the last half hour, but feel free to have a stretch if you like, and I'll kick it off in just a couple of seconds. So hopefully you can see my slides there, and I'm going to briefly talk about these checklists that have been mentioned quite a few times. And I think that these should reassure you a little bit as somebody newly getting into road safety auditing, because it can seem extremely daunting that there's so much to look at, and what if I miss things, and how do I possibly do all this? Well, the couple of things you've got going for you. One is that you are going to be part of a team when you do a real audit. So you've got other people to talk, other people who are looking at things, and you can complement your skills with people who have skills in other areas and knowledge in other areas. And then there's also these checklists, which, as we've said, provide us a series of prompts and thought starters. Now, I'm not going to go through everything in the checklist, but I'm going to point you at where they are. So they are in the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6A. Now, we've put an electronic copy of that into your memory stick, and it's on Schoology, and you'll find the checklists at the end. And you'll see the checklists are there for feasibility stage audit, for preliminary design, detailed design, pre-opening, roadworks, and the like. And you can see that some of them are, for example, the detailed design. We've got 14 pages worth of prompt questions there to get you thinking about a whole series of different aspects of the design and the road and the interface and the tie-ins and the whole lot of it. So I'll jump onto this one. The checklists are thought starters only. We've said people have been saying that quite a bit, and I'm going to reinforce that. If you go through the checklist and cover off every item, it doesn't guarantee you've picked up everything you should, but it's a really great starting point. We need you still to stand back, look broadly at the site and the project and what they're planning, and think broadly as well for anything else. So many items in the checklist are going to be not applicable to the project that you are looking at, the design you're looking at. And the reason for that is these checklists are trying to cover off all different road environments, urban environments, motorways, the lot. So some of them may not be relevant at all, but at least they've got you to think, is that an issue here? Is that relevant? In a road safety audit, you do not submit the checklists. They're simply there to help you with your thinking and guide you along the way. The audit report itself does not contain those checklists. It only contains any issues that you've identified using those checklists and are written up in that specific manner. So when you go to do your road safety audit as part of this course, we are going to ask that you use the checklist, but we still are not going to ask you to submit the checklist. We just want you to use it to help guide your thinking. So pop in any questions that you might have as I go, but that's pretty much all I'm going to cover on the checklists at this stage. And I'm going to start moving pretty quickly now into introducing you to the assignment that you have at the end of this, this session. Okay. Well, I'll check back in on questions in a little bit. Feel free to pop those in there. So your task at the end of this session is to undertake a, we'll call it a desktop audit. Now, there's not really such a thing as a desktop audit as such. Really, a road safety audit involves getting out to the site and having a look at the site, even if you're looking at designs. But we're just going to do the review of design component of a road safety audit to give you some practice at looking at designs, trying to imagine issues that may arise when it's built, and to give you a little bit of practice at writing up road safety audit findings. Risk rating things. Going to try to allocate that safe system energy, which we talked about in the first module. So you might need to go back to those slides. And then making some recommendations and allocating those into, are they primary safe system treatments or supporting? And again, these little intricacies are in the details of module 1 if you get stuck. So in the folder in Schoology and on your memory stick for this module, you will find a Word document, and it's a table just like this. And it has one example filled out for a different site completely to the one that you're going to be looking at, but it gives you an idea of the information we'll be expecting. Your task is to fill out 2 rows, just 2. Okay, we want 2 findings, only 2. And I'm sure some of you will be finding way more than that, but we only want you to write 2. We don't want you to spend any longer on it. I'll come back to that shortly, but I'm going to show you the design that is also in there, but you can look at the PDF notes of this module. And you will find this, and this is the design that we want you to audit. Now, of course, you're not going to get as much information as you'd like, and you're not going to be able to wander around the site and have a look at things. This is all you're going to get. But what we've got here is a plan to put in a Copenhagen-style bike lane on Wellington Street here, which is where you push the parking out from the curbside and the bikes run between the curb and the parking. And there's some separators there. So they ride up here. So that extends out quite a long way, but we're just looking at this one sheet to keep it within a boundary here. The bikes ride along here, and then they go through this intersection. This is a T intersection, but it's a wide median with a light rail, a tram that runs in the median. So that's signalized, the whole thing's signalized, but we're configuring it slightly differently with the bikes running curbside, some alterations in the lanes to be able to fit this new arrangement with the bike facilities, and some new line marking. The removal of a couple of car parking spaces as well. The addition of some local area traffic management speed humps in there. So you can see there, I've zoomed in a little bit. We've got Victoria Parade, 1 carriageway, and this is a carriageway here. We've got the tram line in the middle. This is all signalized. and the blue lines are the new. That's what they're planning. That's what they're going to build. The grey lines underneath, that's the existing conditions, the survey base. Here are some pictures of the site, so you can get a little bit of a feel for it. And you can see this one has been taken at this point, looking up Victoria Street. So there you can see quite a, it's a 60 km/h speed zone, so quite high volumes there. It's in a very built up area with lots of pedestrians, lots of cyclists, pubs and the like. So here's the sort of aerial image of the existing environment. So you can see here that the bikes run right next to the doors of the cars. So there's a dooring risk there, which I'll talk a bit more about when we get to cyclists. But we're pushing the parking out, and the bikes will now come along the curb through here. They will have their own sort of facilities. This is dropping to one lane, and there's some other alterations. Here's some sort of street view imagery from before anything is built. And you can see there's the bike lane. So these car parks come out and it goes through. I'll just go a little bit further forward. There you go. You can see the tram going through. You can see it's signalized there. And you can see the sort of land use. Oh, there's a Wally, just making sure you're alert to those. I'll zoom forward a little bit further, and you can see there we've got the 2 lanes. This is the existing conditions. Remember, you don't audit the existing conditions, you audit what they're planning to build. Once it's built, what is the issues, the risks, the things that have not been addressed. And if you go a little bit further forward, you can see here a double right turn around, a pedestrian crossing here and here. And that's as you turn up here. And looking back, and it looks like they're marking it up to get started at some point fairly soon. Yeah, that's the existing conditions. What they're actually planning to build will sort of look something like this, with a curb separator there sitting out a bit, the Copenhagen style lane. And on the other side, something a little bit like this, where they don't have the parking, and it's the traffic lane through there. So I'll jump back to here. You can see you've got some lane widths, you've got some different information, quite a constrained cross section, the whole area. And what we're wanting you to do is just find 2 things that you would like to report on in a road safety audit report, and write them up in full. So I'm going to jump now to the Word document. Now, Kathy, I may need you to just tell me if we're seeing the Word document yet, or I can just stop my sharing actually.
No, you're good. We've got the Word document. Ah,
good. Okay. So this is the Word document you'll find in this folder for module 3, and we want you to get this. This one's just the example to see what we'd be expecting. Now, I really do love a little snip of the design so we can tell exactly what this is. I don't even need to read these words to know that this is talking about a vehicle leaving the road and hitting this non-drivable culvert end wall. So I can read all that and get some more detail, but that's pretty obvious. So I love marking these assignments, and I've got a nice little diagram like this. I immediately know what you're on about. Work through the words and try to go back to module 1, where I've given you the formula for adding the words in. You know, what's the issue? What's the crash that you believe could result from this? What are anything that may increase the risk? And are there any standards or guidelines? If there are any, but you don't need to put that in. Risk rate it. Use the risk tables, again, from Module 1. I've talked to you through how to think about risk. I like to work backwards on risk in thinking, if they build this exactly as it is planned, and I come back in 5 years' time, how many fatalities or how many serious injuries will have resulted from that specific issue? That's sort of how I go about thinking of it, which then calibrates me into the risk rating. The tendency most new auditors have is to over risk rate things. Everything is intolerable risk. Most experienced auditors hardly ever use the intolerable risk card because that is the big stick. And if you work backwards through that risk rating, you'll understand that those are things that we would expect like many fatalities a year because of that one specific issue. And that is a huge, massive issue that absolutely needs to be rectified immediately. Safe system energy, that's all about pegging this back to, are these crashes happening above the 30 km/h speed for pedestrians and cyclists and motorcyclists, or below it? For side impact, above 50 km/h or below 50 km/h? The head-ons above 70 km/h or below 70 km/h? It's just giving a bit of an indication as to the severity outcomes we're expecting. You do have a severity level in the risk rating, but you will find that you can get to different risk ratings through a number of mechanisms in the matrix. And this just helps to identify the ones that are most sort of targeted at the high end severity. Then you make your recommendations, and you might want to make multiple recommendations, or you might decide there's only one thing that they really must do, in my opinion. And then you try to have a go at labeling those as primary or supporting. Now, this will be challenging for a lot of you because you'll be tempted to write primary for what you feel is your number one recommendation, but that's not necessarily the way it works. Primary are these treatments that virtually eliminate death or serious injury for that particular crash type that you're thinking about. And we really do need to start to address the severity of the crash for these. If you are putting in there a primary treatment, you'd expect the severity levels to be brought down below, very much within these safe system tolerable levels. So I think some of you are really going to have to reread your Module 1 notes to get your head around this and have a go at it. But we only want 2 rows filled out, 2 issues only, and it shouldn't take you a huge amount of time. If you are struggling, if you're really struggling, you either can't find issues, you don't understand how this should be written up or some aspects of this, get in contact. Don't sit there getting annoyed and frustrated for a long period of time. We'd rather you have a look at it, see if you've got your head around it, and if you don't, get in contact with us rather than spending a long time on this. We really wouldn't be expecting you'd spend more than half an hour on this exercise. If you are starting to go well beyond that, you're overdoing it, overcooking this assignment. It's just to get you practicing writing these audit findings, identifying risks and finding issues. So that's the assignment. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions about what the task you have ahead of you. You haven't been let off without a quiz as well. We're going to give you a quiz with the usual 10 questions and the Wally question. And then you've got to do the assignment as well. And we ideally would like those done before next module, but if some of them drift over, we understand, because you do have a lot on your plate, no doubt, at the moment, and this is adding to it. So anybody requiring any clarification around the assignment, anything that they'd like to add, feel free to pop your hand up if you want to talk, or you can write something in. Okay, that's looking good. So you'll be looking at the plans and you can look it up from the notes, the PDF of the slides from this session, and get that Word document and type it into the Word document. You'll upload it through Schoology just the way you did with your assignments, and you all did a wonderful job of that. Have a look at the assignments, because remember, you only touched on one of those topics, and there are so many topics out there that are of interest from a road safety engineering, road safety auditing perspective. So always good to look at those, and people have done a wonderful job trying to make them interactive and engaging and entertaining, and it's worth a look. So upload those once you're done, and we will mark them. Get in contact if you've got any issues. A few minutes before next session, we'll do some more trivia. We've given away a few prizes already, and it looks like you're going to have 5 minutes where you can get started on your quiz and your assignment before the 4 o'clock finish. 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Australian time finish. Some of you are in different time zones. Okay, well, thank you very much. We did cover a huge amount today in terms of the technical stuff, the traffic management stuff, a bit of indication of the checklist, and priming you up for your assignment. We look forward to catching you in the next module, where we'll talk about some of the different road users and their needs. So thank you very much, and good luck with your assignments, but keep in contact if you have any issues.